Hello, Village Church. So good to be with you today. We are back in the Gospel of John. Pastor Mark is preaching today. I know you have missed him for the past couple weeks, but man, we have had a couple of great past services. Last week, day of prayer and fasting, and I want to remind you that that isn't just a single day. That is what we want to take as our whole entire attitude towards 2022. We want to be a church that prays. We want to be a church that fasts, all to grow closer to God and be on mission for what He has in 2022. And the Sunday before that was our Freedom Sunday. If you missed that service, man, go and watch it. What a powerful service. And it really just hones in on what we want to be about: ending slavery in our lifetime, partnering with our global partner, International Justice Mission. And just a little update, over 250 of you partnered to be Freedom Partners with IJM, and those donations were actually matched. So that is the financial equivalent of over 500 Freedom Partners partnering to end slavery. Man, just give yourselves a round of applause. This is amazing. And this is a commitment. We are not going away until slavery ends. And if you want to partner, there's still time. You can go to ijm.ca/villagechurch. Now, today we're going to focus in on the Gospel of John and really continue to learn what it means to follow Jesus. And we want this for your whole entire family. If you have kids, we have gospel-centered content that you can engage with and just learn more about Jesus. To find that, you can go to villagekids.online. And if your kids are a bit older, you can go to villageyouth.online and find all the amazing content there. Okay, well, we are going to start in on worship. And just a reminder what worship is. It is about focusing on God. It's not about what you're doing, how you're singing, how you're sitting. It's about God. So let's focus in and worship God together.
God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Every stronghold will crumble. I hear the chains hit the ground. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Come awaken your people. Come awaken this city. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Every stronghold will crumble. I hear the chains hit the ground. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. The darkest night, you can light it up, you can light it up. Oh God of revival, let hope arise. Death is overcome, yes, you've already won. Oh God of revival, come awaken your people, come awaken the city. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Every stronghold will crumble. I hear the chains hit the ground. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Come awaken your people. Come awaken the city. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Every stronghold will crumble. I hear the chains hit the ground. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out.
You bring life to the barren places, light to the darkest spaces, God. It's your nature. You bring joy to the broken hearted, hope to the ones who've lost their God. It's your nature. There is no desert that your streams can't run to. There are no ruins that your love won't make new. You tell the wasteland that it will bloom again. 'Cause it's your nature. You will restore the years that shame has stolen. You keep the promises that you have spoken. I know this wasteland will be whole again. 'Cause it's your nature. You bring peace to the war inside us, and all fear is silenced, God. It's your nature. You bring joy to the broken hearted. Oh, that your streams can't run to. There are no ruins that your love won't make new. You tell the wasteland that it will bloom again, 'cause it's your nature. You will restore the years that shame has stolen. You keep the promises that you have spoken. I know this wasteland will be whole again, 'cause it's your nature.
Whoa, well, hello there. Happy New Year to you. I am Mark, if we haven't met. Good to see you, and you can tell by my voice, I got the COVID, man. I got it. It caught me. The Deltacron, the friggin' Floroma, whatever this thing is called. It finally got me after 2 years. Anyway, so I'm glad no one's sitting here, because you're going to get it if you are. But welcome to church. No, I'm just kidding. It has been 2 weeks, but we will see where it goes, because I got a little cough here, and the one thing the doctor said is make sure you don't yell. So I am going to do my best to just play it cool. We're just going to play it cool. We're going to be chill, and we're not going to get excited about the Bible. Anyway, good to have you all here. I will do my best anyway. John chapter 8 is where we are across all the campuses online. Good to have you here. We have been doing John for a year, and we're at chapter 8 right now. There's 21 chapters, so you can do the math about how long we're going to be in this thing. And it's fascinating because Jesus says something now. You know, sometimes there's these moments where God kind of sets something up by way of timeline. If you're watching online or you're kind of out of touch, there's this thing going on in Canada right now. There's this movement, this trucker convoy in Ottawa, which is our capital. There's this discussion right now culturally in Canada about freedoms and mandates and vaccines and masks and what freedom really is, and government overreach and societal good and individual autonomy, and all this discussion going on right now as a culture. And it's fascinating because literally a guy sent me, I'm studying the text this week, and of course I was quarantined while I was studying this text too from my family, and so all these questions about freedom kind of arise. And so what's interesting about it is I'm literally studying the text for this week, and it's John chapter 8, starting at verse 31, and Jesus is literally talking about freedom. And this is kind of God's timing in all this, because he kind of switches it and does this very interesting thing when he's talking about freedom, because that, of course, is the cultural moment we're in right now. And when I say that, I don't mean I'm going to get political. All right, some of you wish I would get more political. I see your emails, and I'm going to resist the temptation to do that because, as I said when I was speaking a few weeks ago down in California at a Bible conference, and I was able to, which is probably where I got COVID, to be honest. It's like the Wild West down there. And there was kind of this like moment where I talked to them about, listen, I understand you want your pastors and leaders to make all these political things, but the job of the pastor is actually to reach both kinds of people. Right? The job of the pastor is not to kind of take a political side on something, because when you do that, you lose the other side in the conversation about what is massively important, which is the person and the work of Jesus. That I don't really just want to solve a problem for a group of people for the 80 years that they have on this planet. I want to solve it for the 80 billion after that, which means I have to actually speak to their soul problem versus their cultural problem. And so I looked at them and I said, listen, Jesus tells me I got to reach the older brother and the younger brother in the prodigal son parable. You got the younger brother who's this, and the older brother. The older brother's this kind of, I read my Bible every day, I go to church, and I got to reach that person, the stay-at-home mom, who thinks the world's 10,000 years old and that Satan put dinosaur bones in the earth to distract us. I got to reach her for Jesus. And then I got to reach the younger brother in that parable. The progressive liberal who thinks there's 200 genders and that we got to, eat mushrooms and organics and speak to the universe and go to our own heaven by wearing Lululemon pants. I got to reach them. And so you got to stick to the gospel then as a pastor in order to reach people with ultimate freedom, which is what Jesus is talking about today. Because freedom is the ultimate question. Through culture, philosophy, psychology, art, entertainment, it's all been a discussion about what freedom actually is and what really matters in regard to purpose and meaning and value in life as a human being, and what does it mean to be free. It's just fascinating that we hit this text. So here's John chapter 8. You got your Bible? Okay, here we go. John chapter 8, starting in verse 31. We left off in verse 30 a couple weeks ago. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, if you abide in my word. Now, this word abide, let's talk about this for a second. I remember first year Bible college, I walk into a Gospel of John class, so I'm like 19, 20 years old, and we get assigned this paper. I think I've told you about this before. I'm John 15, and Jesus says, I abide in you, and you abide in me, and I'm the vine, and you're the branches, and so on. And I remember going into the Greek text and looking up this word abide. And I found it fascinating. There's this word menete, and I was like, okay, what does that mean? I actually went and looked up a dictionary. What I'd heard kind of pastors talk about is this idea, abide in Jesus, and that means that you're supposed to, pray and be close, and all of that, and kind of be worshiping him and all of that. And I went and I looked, and I realized that the word abide literally actually means to remain, which is a fascinating concept because so often, even here at Village Church, we talk to those of you who may not know Jesus yet. Like you're exploring Christianity, you're wondering in the marketplace of ideas, where does Christianity fit in regard to origins, meaning, morality, destiny? Does it work? Does it answer the problem of evil? Does it answer my finance problems? Does it answer my marriage problems? All these things, and you're wondering. And we argue week in and week out that if you haven't come to know Jesus yet, yes, he is the one. He makes the most sense out of history, archaeology, science, morality. Like there's a reason that you feel justice right now, whether you're on the left or the right. When you're on social media, where does that stirring for justice come up in you? It wouldn't be there if you were just an animal. It has to be something deeper, something profound, something fundamental about you, something existential that says, I'm gonna fight for what's right. And if you believe that there is something that is right and something that is wrong, whether that's issues of politics or issues of the environment or issues of justice, then you've got to ask the question, where did I get this? If there is a moral law, there has to be a moral law giver. And so we've always said, I was coming back when I was at the airport, and a lady she was starting to walk, and she left her suitcase behind, and I was in a hurry, so I'm a good Christian, so I just kind of went in front of her, right? You thought I said I was gonna help her. No, I was in a hurry, guys. So I kind of went in front of her, and then I sat in line, and I looked back at her, and she wanted me dead. At that moment, I was the worst person and I just and then you don't look anymore because you're and then I could just feel her eyeballs in the back of my head, just grinding a big hole in the back of my head. Because she's like, you did something wrong. If anyone ever questions the idea that morality is absolute, just cut them off in the grocery line, cut them off in your car, kick them in the shins, say, sorry, that's how I feel fulfilled in life. Don't project your values on me. We all know that there is something absolute that says dropping napalm on babies is wrong, murder's wrong, rape is wrong. And if you're gonna say that, you gotta say to yourself, okay, how did I come to know this? We talk about that all the time. So some of you You need to know as you explore Christianity, are you going to give your life to Jesus? We would say yes. We would plead with you, yes. But this text isn't talking about you. It's talking about people who had believed already. And so the question becomes, will you remain? Will you not start a relationship with Jesus? Anybody can start something. It ain't hard. How many of you have started a business? Right? I started 19 businesses before I was 21. Fail. Snowboarding. Fail. Right? We all have, we talk about getting married. Any moron can get married. It's not hard. Put on a tuxedo, trick a woman into liking you, married. The question is, will you be married and flourishing not on the first day, the day where you stand in front of all of your friends with a tuxedo and it's autopilot? It's the last day of your marriage that's the question, right? Did you love and serve your wife like Christ loved and served the church? Did you love and respect your husband? Did you flourish? Did you make the sacrifices necessary for your kids to flourish, for your community to flourish, for your church to flourish? So when you're sitting there on your last day with your last breath, you can go, okay, I actually remained in him, not started. That's easy. Jesus is a very compelling figure. The question is, are you still going to follow him on the last day of your life? Will you still love and treasure him above everything else? And here's what I see today. I see people, and they're not remaining. They're choosing to disengage, sometimes from the church, sometimes from Jesus himself, and they're walking away, and they're questioning it, and they're rethinking it, and they're deconstructing it. They're not remaining, and the question becomes, can you remain, even in the context of the church? Every image that the Bible gives about who the church is collective. It's not individual. It's not you by yourself just watching online, raising your hand and moving on with life. Every image, body, temple, family, collective, which means you got to let people speak into your life, which you know sucks. Right? Someone calls you out for sin. It's like, no, I'm just gonna live my Christian life, just me and Jesus. Do my devos, me and Jesus. Never the image in the Bible, always collective. And so here's the problem with that. You're gonna be part of a church of a bunch of morons, right? A bunch of imperfect people who don't think like you, dress like you, talk like you, vote like you, act like you, talk like you. And the gospel says, that's life, y'all. And they're there in your life to grind up against you. There are people in the church, I know they drive you crazy because the church is like, I got people, guys, I got people online. I got a guy online, I don't even know how to block people anymore. It's like, I post a Halloween photo of my children, and I'm dressed up to go out for Halloween, and this guy thinks I'm a false prophet. Bro, this is why people laugh at Christians, right? Trick or treat, false prophet. What are we talking about? See, the church, now you might even disagree with me, but Halloween, where I'm gonna send an email. Awesome. Brittany will love reading it. So here's the thing. Guys, I know you're gonna disagree with me on stuff, and I'm gonna disagree with you on stuff, and that's the point. You don't have to agree with me on everything. There's no monolithic Christianity that says every single view on every single issue. It's that we all grind up against each other, and that's the church. It's beautiful. But there's imperfect people, there's broken people, because the church is a hospital, not a country club. And that's why no matter what you face, you go, okay, I have to somehow abide. I gotta remain. I gotta get to the last day. not the first day. That's the difficult thing. Now, what are we supposed to remain in? He says, you're supposed to remain in my word. Now, this is very interesting. So, what's the thing you're supposed to get to the last day and remain in? So, Jesus spoke to his disciples when he was obviously on earth, but then he's gone, right? Jesus Christ is gone. He doesn't, physically, he's not on planet earth anymore. So, what do we have? Of course, we have his spirit, but we have his word, and the word is what? The Bible, the scriptures, right? This is where God put his word, and he said, okay, I'm gonna be gone for a while, so here's what I need you to do. I need you to actually remain in the Bible. I need you to actually love it, take it into yourself, read it, study it, because this is what I think. This is who, I'm gonna explain to you who I am, what you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to live, what you're supposed to do with money and marriage and family and work and neighbors and life and politics and all these things. I'm gonna explain it to you in the Bible, and then you're supposed to read it and go, okay, that's what this is, versus just feeling stuff in life and then deciding that that's what you're supposed to do and be. And that's the tension. Years ago, I was thinking about this the other day. I was with this group of pastors, and we were talking about some of the charismatic movement. And I love charismatics, but sometimes they can, get wonky. And I remember there was what's the phrase we used to use? I stole it from some guy. Oh yeah, we're charismatic as a church with a seatbelt, right? Small c, charismatic. We believe in the Holy Spirit. We believe the gifts of the Spirit. But I remember years ago, some of you probably know this, there was a church actually like somewhere in BC, somewhere within probably an hour here or something. And it was like this movement, charismatic movement. And the guy was like, God's speaking to me, and here's how he speaks to me. When people come up for healing, what I do, this is not a joke, this is on YouTube, you can watch it, I kick them in the face. No, true story, go look it up, I'm not making this up. Right, there was a huge movement, huge following, thousands of people. And he would go, this old lady comes up, this is his story. 70 years old, comes up to the front, oh, I need healing, my arthritis. And the Lord said, whatever his name is, hey, Joe, kick her in the face. And I'm like, what, Lord? That doesn't make any sense. Kick her in the face. And he's like, okay, boom, healed. And the crowd goes, ah! And then he goes, a week later, this other lady walks up to me. What am I supposed to do? Oh, I got my, and he's like, just kick her right in the stomach. This was his ministry. No joke. And thousands of people followed it, which is not a thing. Like, just in case some of you are wondering. Like, guys, seriously, there's not even any discernment here. No, at no time when I'm reading the Bible does some blind guy come up to Jesus and go, I can't hear. And Jesus is like, ah! Lady with the issue of blood, bam! Guys, the things that Christians will believe, the ways that you will get deceived and misled. Why? Because you don't know this. You don't know what it says. You don't know the theology of it. You haven't dug into it. You don't live it. You don't breathe it. You don't eat it. You don't treasure it. And so you are easily distracted. You are easily led astray. And over again, God says, guys, this is actually, you want to know what the mark of a true disciple is, Jesus says. It's that you remain in my word. And it's so funny because we never really, I rarely just kind of stop and just say that to you because I assume it. I assume that you've kind of picked up that this is a priority for us. Because literally what I do every single week is just, we gather, we worship Jesus, we come together collectively to love and serve and give and have that interaction with each other, community, but then we open the Bible and we unpack it like every week. And there's an assumption in the room that that's what's gonna happen versus me opening like Chaucer. Like rarely do you think you're gonna show up to church and I'm gonna open Shakespeare and we're just gonna talk about shit, but why? Why? Assume that for a second. Why? Why aren't I just reading Lord of the Rings, chapter 8? Oh my gosh, this is where Aragorn gets the orcs. Why? Because Jesus didn't ask me to do that for you. He said we got to remain in my word. This is the thing with the power to change your life. This is the thing that will transform not what you do, but what you want to do. This is the thing that will tell you who God is, how to get to heaven, how to have joy, how to have peace, how to rid yourself of anxiety, versus just sitting around, thinking it up, having some bad pizza, and you start kicking people. Because you have no authoritative meta-narrative leading and guiding your life. You have your gut. And the one thing I know about you and me is that our gut is a disastrous way to live our life. That's how guys go away and cheat on their wife sitting in a hotel room. Because my gut, I felt it. But you had no authority. So the question becomes, is the Bible an authority over your life at all? Augustine said the Bible is the face of God for us now. Now I know sometimes you're like, it's boring though. My kids asked me the other day, just real question. I think they were scared to ask it. They're sitting there like, Dad, I know you're a pastor. Some passages I find boring. The Lord told me, kick her in the, no. I'm like, oh yeah, like what? Like, oh my gosh, I hit this passage the other day. And I'm like, man, I'm glad my daughters are reading the Bible. I hit this passage, there's just a bunch of names. So on and so on and so on, begat, so on and so on. I get it. Let's just admit it. Let's just take all breaths. Sometimes the Bible's boring, especially in our modern culture where our heads are so titillated all the time and we just scroll. We hit reels and reels and reels and stories and TikTok and all these different things. There was just constant, our brains are constantly going. It's like crack, just boom, constant. And so we get to a list of names in a book thousands of years old. It's like Jehoiakim begat Mepharasim. And everyone's like, reel. And there's some girl dancing and now you're distracted. I get it. But listen, some parts are gonna be boring in the same way that when you're watching a movie, not every scene is an action scene or you're gonna be bored. You gotta have those Godfather moments where there's just a conversation in a half-lit room and you're like, this boring scene in the bigger context is actually super important, so I know at the climactic moments what's actually happening. That I know when the greatest moment in history takes place and Jesus Christ comes and lives a perfect life and dies on a cross as the fulfillment of Israel's story and rises again and the Spirit drops on the church and there's redemption of Jew and Gentile toward a new creation. I know that that's an amazing story because I've read the earlier stuff. Even if there's boring moments, they have power in them because it's His word. It's not just stuff that gets made up. And so the Bible has to become the authority in our life to such a point where we go, and this is where the skeptics are wrong because the skeptics come in and they go, yeah, but the Bible's a joke. And you know me, I preach enough about this. We go through contradictions as a church, and I show you there aren't contradictions in the Bible. I show you why understanding this passage, archaeologically, the Bible makes sense. Historically, the Bible, over and over, the skeptics get this wrong because they go, yeah, but look at, in the Old Testament, there's Leviticus, and it says not to eat shellfish, and it says not to wear polyester with cotton, and we do that, and so the Bible's a joke. I can't tell you, go on reddit.com, go on the internet. This is literally the cultural argument for why you should discard the Word of God, because if God said that shellfish is bad, ergo we're out. And that's just to misunderstand how the Bible is read. There's different epochs and different times and eras and settings. That is a passages that, yes, has been superseded by Jesus. All of those rules about shellfish and cod, it's all superseded. But it had a moment, it had a time in the Old Testament when they had a particular way where they were fighting and killing for land. That's not a thing anymore. There's no Holy Land anymore in the New Testament. Read it, back to front. No more Holy Land. It's a transnational people of God now, from every tribe, tongue, and nation, worshiping the Lamb who is slain. Right? It's not, okay, it's a Jewish thing where they got to fight for land and shellfish, and there's rules about polyester and all. That's gone. I talked to a guy the other day who wishes it wasn't gone because he's dating all these girls and I'm like, bro, you got to stop this. You got to follow Jesus. And he's like, yeah, but I was reading the other day about concubines, and I'm wondering if that's still a thing. I'm like, no, that's pre-Jesus, bro. And even then it wasn't good. Every single guy who had concubines had a mess of a life. Can't keep up with all these ladies. And then you get people, yeah, but that's to misunderstand. We got a theocracy. That's a theocracy. That was during that time. Yeah, but we should be living in Canada. We should be tearing down religious temples and stuff because this is what God wants to do. No, that's Old Testament. In the New Testament, we are the people of God in the world, but not of it, salt and light, to be on mission to the nations which have come to our doorstep. And we get to answer the question of their own soul. We're not at a holy war anymore. This is misunderstanding Old Testament. And so we know the power of the word comes in and actually transforms how we think, but you got to get it right. You got to understand genre. You got to understand context. You just fly into a Bible passage. I remember years ago reading a hermeneutics book, which is a textbook about the art and science of interpretation. It talked about the idea that you can't just zone in on a passage and randomly go, okay, God, speak me, okay. And then, because you get and then Judas hung himself. And you're like, okay, let's try that again. Go and do likewise. Okay, not that one. Whatever you do, do it quickly. All right, that's enough of this. I don't know why I just became Ace Ventura right there, but anyways. It's like, that's not a good way, man. There's a context, there's a genre, there's writings, there's history, there's a moment. And this is a beautiful thing about reading the Bible and studying the Bible is it's so beautiful. It's so impactful, it's powerful, it's creative, it's wonderful. And sometimes you gotta read it in large swaths. A verse a day keeps the devil away is not probably a great philosophy when it comes to Bible reading. You gotta be able to go in and read. I remember reading the book of Genesis in 3 sittings. And it was beautiful because it played out almost like watching Breaking Bad or something, It's like this drama and there's this and that and there's God's moving this and he's shifting that. I could sit on this for the next week. We could do this every day. We could talk about how I fell in love with the Bible. I wish I had time. This little stories about reading Mark 8 and realizing that Jesus, he walks up to this blind guy, kicks him right in the, he walks up to this blind guy. All right, now that's not going away. He walks to this blind guy and he touches him, and then the guy half heals and he goes, I see people walking around like trees. And then Jesus touches him again, and then the very next story is Jesus asking the disciples, who do people say that I am? And they say, well, some say Elijah and some say John the Baptist, some say, but who do you say that I am? And he says, and they say, Peter says, you're the Christ. And he says, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. The Christ is gonna be rejected by the elders and suffer and get crucified and die, and 3 days later rise again. And Peter takes him aside and goes, no, that's not gonna happen to you. And the point of the story, right, and the hinge Mark chapter 8, literally when you read it in the Greek, there was no chapter and verse back then. It's literally the middle of the story, and you realize Mark put the blind guy's story there for a reason, because he's saying the disciples only half see. They see like people walking around like trees. They don't quite get it yet, because he says, here's the definition of what the Christ is, and they go, I don't like that definition. And the rest of the Gospel of Mark is going to get them to understand who Jesus is with clarity, because they need a second touch. Jesus doesn't half heal a guy because he's tired. I'm blind, healed. No, I totally still can't see. What? Shoot. Okay, just give me 10. I need a Red Bull. We'll come back to this. Everything has a purpose. Every story is set up to get you to understand the next story. The Bible is laid out. It's not, guys, it's not boring. It's a sin to make the Bible boring. It's alive and well. But you got to understand how it flows. Okay. Okay. Now he goes on to what I was talking about before. You are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Man, so much to say about this, so little time. It was funny because a buddy sent me a picture of a guy at the truck convoy yesterday in Ottawa, and he was holding a sign. As I'm sitting writing this sermon in my office, surrounded by commentaries, I get to this verse, and he sends me the picture of a sign. The guy's holding the sign, and the truth will set you free, John 8:32. And I'm like, that's totally what that verse is about. I'm reading in the commentaries right now. That's actually what it is about. That's what Jesus was talking about. No, it isn't. But of course, these massive questions about freedom are very important, both on an individual level, a societal level, how it all works. But here's Jesus answering the question about freedom and truth. And here's why this blows us away. I mean, I could go through a few reasons, but I'm going to mention two. The first is our culture, and if you're watching this, this is probably you too, if you've been to university or existed in Western culture at all, our culture questions the legitimacy of this word. Right? Up until 200 years ago, the question of whether truth was something to be sought after was not even a question. Philosophically, academically, scientifically, you would just go after facts. You would go after truth. You would realize that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit and boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Those are facts. That's science. That's objective. And so what happened 200 years ago, when you get writings of postmodernity coming in, they start to look and they start to say, you know, the problem with truth claims is that governments and power structures use them to oppress people. And trying to get into certain texts and interpret one meaning out of it is really not helpful, because then those meanings can become authoritarian and they can enslave everybody. So here's what we need to do. We need to react to that authoritarian spirit and just deduce that there's no such thing as truth. And so postmodernity was born out of this concept. Your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, and you get to live your truth and you get to carry on and do what you want to do according to your truth, which was never even a phrase before. And so we have it today. News, fake news. I think a word was used in a dictionary a few years ago called truthiness. It's like it's kind of fuzzy now, right? What is true? You read a thing and you're like, well, I thought that was true, but then I read it from the other side. I'm not really sure what's true anymore. But for years, we understood 2 times 2 equals 4. That's math. And if that's true, then you got to go, are there other things that are actually true? But in our culture, we say, no, you believe in Jesus, but other people might believe in Islam, other people might be Jews, other people might be Hindus, and you can't actually say that Jesus is the only way. You can't actually say there is absolute truth. And of course, Jesus is pushing against that very idea. And he's saying, no, there is truth, and you're supposed to go find it. It is way too easy, and I would deem weak as a culture to decide to not pursue truth for the sake of being able to sit around the Thanksgiving table and get along. That's not a good trade, guys. Truth is what we're supposed to be seeking. I remember years ago, there was a debate, very famous debate. Bertrand Russell, dead now, but one of the most famous atheistic philosophers of the time, and a guy named Frederick Copleston. He was a theist, and they would go and debate at universities all the time. And in this one debate, Copleston said, you believe in right and wrong, don't you? Bertrand Russell, and Russell said, yeah, I believe in right and wrong. He said, okay, but how do you decide what is right and wrong? And Russell said, well, I guess I decide the same way I decide between yellow and green. He said, and Copleston said, well, hold on a sec. The way you see yellow and green is that you see it, but you can't see truth. He's like, that's true, okay. Well, maybe the way I decide between right and wrong is I feel it. Is there any other way? And Copleston did not really recount it, but I was reading one scholar who did, and he said, you know what his follow-up question should have been, is based on that premise, there are some cultures in our world that love their neighbors, other cultures that eat them, both on the premise of personal preference, both on the premise of how they feel. Which one do you agree with? See, we all know that eating people, raise your hand if you think eating people's okay. You gotta go, bro. It's just not. It's just true. It's just true. And so the question becomes not abandoning the question of truth, but understanding that the whole concept that we need to abandon truth actually is the ultimate power play on that side of things. Because when you say, I don't want people expressing power, ergo, let's take away the concept of truth, you've actually done the ultimate power play and you've removed the conversation from truth. In fact, you're actually cutting off the branch you're sitting on, because the moment you say there's no such thing as truth, of course, that's a truth statement. That's a claim of truth. There is no truth except that statement. Right, yes. So Jesus pushes back and he says, no, guys, it ain't good enough to pretend there's no such thing as truth. I want you to decide there's such thing as truth, and Christians need to be a prophetic postured voice in our culture, declaring this, talking about it in the coffee shop, talking about it around the table, and not letting people escape with the easy clause of there's no such thing as truth. That's one of our jobs in the world. Here's the other thing that we've done, and this is an interesting one that's very new. I realized this last night when I was working on this text. We've reversed these. See, Jesus says, you base your life on truth, and it will set you free. Right? Like, you believe Jesus is the Son of God, you believe the scriptures, you give your life to him, and you'll be set free. And I'll talk about free in a minute. You'll be set free. You will have true freedom if you set your life under truth and you build it on truth. Here's what we've done as a culture. We've reversed them, and we've said this: when I feel free, that's the truth. Right? When I feel free internally, that is what is true. And ergo, you cannot challenge truth in me, because truth is purely subjective, individual, and internal. This has come with the rise of psychology as the priority. It was not always the case that psychology was the way that we thought about things. There were eras where we thought through literature. There was eras that we thought through science, philosophy, and now psychology. If you go to a bookstore, biggest section, bar none, is the self-help section, which is filled with pop psychology, helping you find your identity, finding out who you are, telling you to explore your internal self. This is really, really new in the concept of culture making. And this is what we got to understand. This is so new that we have to be able to have the conversation and dialogue and be able to push back, or we're dead. But that conversation is being silenced. We're not able to have a conversation about it because it's just individual choice. It's something inside of you. It's something about your emotional life and your emotional health. And here's the tragedy of it. That is the slavery. Here's a Soren Kierkegaard, who's this philosopher. Here's what he said. We think freedom is throwing off all social restraints and doing whatever we want. But that isn't freedom. That's the slavery. Because now we're a slave to our feelings. We're a slave to our passions. We're enslaved to the cultural moment that we happen to be born into. We're a slave to the media that we listen to the family that we have. That's the slavery. What we need, Kierkegaard said, is we need an objective reality to come shake us out of that and go, this is what the conversation about truth and freedom is, versus you're stuck in it and you're actually enslaved to your own feelings thinking this is true freedom. And we see the cultural implication of this over and over and over again. the logic begins to break down when this is how we think. We're seeing it right now. We're seeing men who are breaking all kinds of women's sports records, weightlifting, running faster, all of these kind of things based on an internal feeling. And this, of course, is not a talk about all of that and getting into the nuance of it, because it's a very important conversation. The point is, we need to be able to have the conversation about whether that's, because literally this is 5 seconds old in the context of humankind. This conversation about what is identity, what does it actually mean to be a woman, what does it mean to be a man? All of these things are having this social implication, and we're right at the beginning of it right now. And Christians should at least be allowed to be invited into the conversation, lovingly, with nuance, but invited into the conversation. Because Jesus comes along and he says, guys, don't flip it and think when you feel free that that's what truth is. Doesn't work that way. I had a friend the other day, he calls me up, he's like, hey, listen, I'm finally gonna go get the vaccine. So he's holding out. Relax. So, finally gonna get the vaccine. I was like, okay. He goes, but I want the Johnson & Johnson. He goes through all of his reasons why he just wants the Johnson & Johnson. Okay, you want the Johnson & Johnson. That's the true one, okay. So, but they only give it to healthcare workers and the indigenous community, Johnson & Johnson. So I can't get it. And he said, but what's fascinating is when I called them, this is a true story, I said, I would like to get the Johnson & Johnson. And they said, are you a healthcare worker? He said, no. And they said, are you indigenous? And he said, no. And then they said, are you identifying as indigenous for now? What a slap in the face to the indigenous community. That we can just act and pretend for the afternoon so we can get a Johnson & Johnson? The stock is going up on Johnson & Johnson right now. I've said it so many times. Everyone's like, what's this Johnson & Johnson? I want some. Think about the conversation that we're having as a culture. And Jesus says, listen, the truth will set you free, not the opposite. Put yourself under truth and you will experience true freedom. That's the thing that brings order to the chaos. D.A. Carson, a New Testament scholar, says it this way: true freedom is not the liberty to do anything we please, but the liberty to do what we ought to do. And it is genuine liberty because doing what we ought now pleases us. Let me say that again. True freedom is not the liberty to do anything we please, but the liberty to do what we ought to do. And it is genuine liberty because doing what we ought now actually pleases us. So Jesus says you actually have to go after truth. And of course, in chapter 14, Jesus says what? I am the way. Oh my gosh. Are you guys sleeping? I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus goes, guys, you're trying to get freedom. This is your ultimate goal. And you're going after psychology, philosophy, you're going through all these different things you're trying to get, and I've already told you how to get it. It's me. I'm the truth. And the kind of freedom that I want to bring you, picture who he's talking to, Israel, in the first century. You know Jesus is a Jew, right? I know we make him in our own image. And all the white people paint him white, and we're, look at this, Chuck Norris. That Jesus was a first century Jew speaking to Israel who had lived under slavery in Egypt and was presently sitting under a kind of pseudo-slavery under the Roman Empire, feeling like we're slaves. And he goes, I got a way for you to be free. But it has nothing to do with overthrowing the Roman Empire and changing the situation that you're in, the environment that you're in. Nothing to do with that. I'm gonna give you a kind of freedom you could only dream about. Well, what's it from? Sin. That's your problem. You are separated from God. You are broken internally. You are separated from God. You are separated from people. You are a slave to sin. And I want to set you free from it. Your problem is sin. As one writer has said, if God looked down and saw that our problem was a lack of entertainment, he would have sent an entertainer. And if he looked down and he saw that our problem was political, he would have sent a politician. And if he looked down and he saw that our problem was financial, he would have sent an economist. But he didn't. He looked down and he saw that our problem was sin, so he sent a savior. No matter what you think your social dynamics are, your problem is you are still broken and separated from God. You have an eternal problem you got to deal with, which is that without Jesus, when you die, you go to hell, separated from God forever. And God has provided one way to solve that problem of sin, and that's the person and the work of Jesus. He lived a perfect life in your place, died a brutal death on the cross, absorbing the wrath of God on himself, dying as an atonement for your sin, and then rising from death to give you life, to free you from sin, not just from hell. That's the eternal expression of it. I'm talking how sin affects your life in the now, in this moment, how it affects your marriage. He wants to free you in that. The addictions, the habits, the things that derail your life. He wants to free you. He doesn't want you to be a slave to the things that derail your life anymore. He actually wants to free you. That's what he's trying to do. And how does he do it? He does it through the Son. Jesus is the one who actually saves us. That's true freedom. That's verse 36. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Free in every way that matters. Doesn't mean you're not going to suffer tragedy in your life. You know lots of good Christians who die at 35 of cancer, who are paralyzed, who go through tragedy in their life. He didn't say he's going to stop any of that. He says he's going to solve your sin problem. The Son is going to do it. Jesus himself, that's who does it. True freedom. So sure, we're supposed to have a public discourse about countries and nation states and individual freedoms and rights. And we're, as Christians, supposed to go with our convictions and fight for that and love and serve people and communities in that way, 100%. But if we spend all our time doing that, we can create an amazing country that lives according to Christian principles, and everyone dies and goes to hell. I'll leave you with the words of J.C. Riley, who was a preacher in the 1800s. He says this: after all our boasting, there are many so-called free men who are nothing better than slaves. There are many who are totally ignorant of the highest, purest form of liberty. The noblest liberty is that which is the property of the true Christian alone. They are the only truly free people on this planet. And then he says this: without this freedom, all other freedom is a worthless privilege. Free speech, free laws, political freedom, commercial freedom, national freedom, all these cannot smooth down a dying pillow or disarm death or fill our consciences with peace. Nothing can do that but the freedom which Christ alone bestows. Father, I pray that in the midst of all of our desires, all of our frustrations, all of our fears, all our anxieties right now to make a better world and to love and serve people, which is a huge Christian ethic, it should be part of our life. I pray in the midst of that tension that we would also recognize the need to deal with the problem of our own soul, the problem of our slavery to sin, and that we would find true freedom in you. There are people right now that are watching this in this room at one of the sites, any of the sites, and they've never given their life to you. And I just pray in this moment, Holy Spirit, if you're speaking, if you're moving, they would give their life to Jesus. And on their way out of here, they would go tell someone at the Connect desk, go tell a pastor, go tell one of our staff. They would pray for them, love them, give them a Bible, that they would take a first step toward freedom. And then the people who already have believed in you, that something would have happened through this text today that will keep them until the last day, that they will remain. And that we would seek after the freedom that changes everything, the freedom that only comes from the Son. Because it is then and then alone that we are free indeed, and that we would chase that freedom and not give up before we find it, not settle for just worldly definitions of it. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen.
When I've run out of words to pray, and when words come, they feel in vain. It feels so hard to open my hands again, to open my hands again. And when I try to seek your will, but I can't hear you in the silence still. It feels so hard to lift my hands in praise, to lift my hands in praise. When I'm at the end of me and I don't know what I need, your Spirit intercedes. When I'm at the end of me and words I cannot speak, your Spirit pleads for me. You're singing oh for me. When I catch glimpses of your heart and the distance doesn't feel as far, I'm learning to listen and lean into all that you are, all that you are. When I'm at the end of me and I don't know what I need, your Spirit intercedes. When I'm at the end of me and words I cannot speak, your Spirit pleads for me. You're singing oh for me. You're singing oh for me. Ever patient, always gracious, Spirit, make me like you. Ever righteous, bestowing kindness, Spirit, make me like you. Ever patient, always gracious, Spirit, make me like you. Always righteous, bestowing kindness, Spirit, make me like you. When I'm at the end of me and I don't know what I need, your Spirit
Man, I love praising Jesus and worshiping him together. No, we're worshiping, just a reflection that God loves you and me, all of us so much. And just as we worship, it's just a time to see him more clearly. And I hope that was your experience today as you heard the message and you were worshiping Jesus. What we're about here is just becoming fully devoted followers of Jesus. And hopefully you have a next step, what that could look like for you. It is hard being a follower of Jesus, whether you've been following him, you're just thinking about following him, or you've been following him for 50 years. A big thing is we have to do this together. So as you're watching this service, know that you have a whole church community around you that would love to help you out. And so reach out. Let us know what's going on in your life so that we can come along and partner beside you. Best way to let us know is to go to thisisvillagechurch.com/connect with us. There you can just let us know what's going on, if you're looking for some support, or you have a prayer request. And as we're talking about in this whole service and what's going on, we have big plans for 2022. And we know that our plans are no match for what God's plans are this year. But we got some church plants on the way. We got new ministries we're starting. We have more community groups. And all of that is amazing. But none of that is possible without you, without your support, financially partnering with us every single day. You make this possible. And if you want to partner with us, we'd love for you to do so. Best way is go to thisisvillagechurch.com/give, or the easiest way is just text Village Church to 77977. Well, thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.